The anterior portion is more cellular than the posterior portion.
Yeah, I just need to get back on.
So if you take a look, can you see how this one's all cells? See how this one is very fibrous looking? Those are nerve fibers that are going into the posterior pituitary. Okay, so this is the anterior, this is the posterior. Some of the slides are stained a little bit differently, so dark versus light doesn't necessarily work out all that well. Okay, so this would be the anterior pituitary, this would be the posterior pituitary. And I'll let you figure out what hormones go where. All right? I mean, that's pretty simple. But again, your anterior pituitary is much more cellular. If we just zoom in and take a look at it, you can see all those nice little cells packed in there. The posterior pituitary has all of these nice little fibers running through it. Okay? So you can see it has a less cellular nature to it. There's your posterior pituitary and your anterior pituitary there. Okay? Questions about the pituitary? What is it also sometimes referred to as?
The hypothesis or hypothesis.
Hypophysis, hypophysis, however you want to pronounce it. How about
Over it 3 times like this.
Whatever works.
how about this one? You know, the trick with these slides are recognition. It's not so much that they're hard, it's just being able to recognize what you're looking at. This is the thyroid. Why is it the thyroid?
It looks like fat tissue.
You've got these little things in there called follicles, right? And it's another thing that sometimes students forget is what these little structures are called. These rounded structures that you see here are thyroid follicles. And the follicles are composed of simple cuboidal epithelium, and then you have this stuff that's found on the inside. What is that stuff collectively called on the inside? Colloid. Okay? And that colloid is going to be a mixture of the hormones that are secreted in the thyroid, which would be
ADH? No.
T3 and T4.
And
Triiodo.
is it calcitonin that's also released from here?
Calcitonin's in the parathyroid, right? I'm just wondering, I'm asking, I'm not clear.
Is it?
Because I thought it was the parathyroid hormone that releases the calcitonin.
Parathyroid hormone would be produced where?
Is it in the follicles? Is it the follicular cells? I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking.
Y'all better look that one up, okay, and work on that one. But usually, if you're asked for 2 products, here's T3 and T4, right? You are going to have parathyroid hormone being produced by the parathyroids, and you understand parathyroids sit on top of these. You can see them on the model. They're the little white dots or little dots that sit on top of those. Okay, but on this one, typically, what most students confuse this for is for adipose tissue.
Is that basically where you ask the parathyroids, those little nodules on the back of the mouth?
Yeah. All right. Any questions about this guy? This is one of those that you'll see probably in this presentation, or maybe even here, and there'll be a pointer pointing to one of these things, and it'll say, tell me the name of the gland that you're looking at here, and then number 2 will be, tell me the name of the structure at the end of the pointer. So what would the structure be? It's a follicle. Question number 3, what does this follicle contain? What are 2 hormone products that are produced by this structure? T3, T4. Nice little overview there.
So is the parathyroid part of the thyroid?
It is a separate gland that sits on top of it. You'll see it on the model.
Are we cool with just follicle?
Follicle's fine, I would assume.
What is this thyroid gland?
Thyroid follicle would probably be a little bit better.
Follicle in the thyroid?
What's the thyroid globulin?
It's the colloid. It's the stuff that. It's the
Would y'all
mixture
take
stuff.
either one?
I would be okay with colloid. Might be a question that you ask him. What are you looking at here? It says pancreas. Pancreas has 2 regions, right? Because it has 2 functions. What are these lighter regions called? These are the Isles of Langerhans. Okay? And then what are these cells called? Acini. What do these produce?
Oh man, get the juice,
Pancreatic juice. Okay. What does this produce?
Glucagon and insulin.
Glucagon and insulin.
Are these mostly round?
These?
Yes.
Usually the clusterings are fairly rounded. That's one of the reasons they got their names as Isles of Langerhans, because they were easy to find when you slice
What'd you say it secretes?
These, insulin and glucagon.
And then the acini do the pancreatic juice.
Pancreatic juice, your amylase and your lipase and all that's going to be created there. So you have a mixed gland here. You have one that is both exocrine and endocrine. And that's something to kind of understand more for lecture than anything. It is something that you'll sometimes see asked is in lecture about the endocrine and exocrine function. What's this weird alien landscape? It's an ovary. That's right. Okay. If you look out around the outside of the ovary, see these little bundles of small structures around the outside? Those are your primordial follicles around the outside. And then as they develop, they're going to move deeper, and they're going to start to develop that epithelium around the outside. So there's a primary. The difference between a primordial, you can see a primary up here as well, again, is that cuboidal epithelium that starts to form around the outside. Okay? As we move in, see if we can find one that has a well-developed antrum. Big fan of this slide. Well, there's one. See this one? There's a secondary. Yeah, starting to produce pretty nice corona there. Still really small antrum when compared to this one. Everything that's on the screen now is a Graafian follicle. You see the ovum down at the bottom, the corona radiata, and you can see your vesicular material here inside of the antrum there.
What would be the corona radiata on that? That's the.
It's like the whitish area.
Right up under the purple, the little blue.
Ovum.
line.
Do you see the bluish area? That's the zona pellucida. And then the cells that are stretching around it would be the corona radiata.
Gotcha.
Okay?
What does the antrum actually do?
All right. Now, you remember when you went to the development, you talked about going from when the ovum is released, the follicle stays behind and morphs into the corpus luteum, and then eventually into the corpus albicans. Okay, corpus luteum is essentially going to be that follicle that's left behind, and it's going to continue to secrete hormones. So the antrum is actually holding many of those hormones in place, so that when the egg erupts, it also starts releasing.